Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also, Secretary Mattis had to have this waiver as well. Mr. Hegseth, this hearing is about whether you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense, and one of the qualifications, to answer my colleague's question, is to actually win the votes of every member of this committee and to be confirmed by the United States Senate. And you need to convince us that you're worthy of that vote, because the people of the state of Illinois voted for me to be their senator so that I could cast that vote when it comes to picking who is going to be the next Secretary of Defense. This hearing now seems to be a hearing about whether or not women are qualified to serve in combat, and not about whether or not you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense. And let me just say that the American people need a SecDef who's ready to lead on day one. You are not that person. Our adversaries watch closely during times of transition, and any sense that the Department of Defense that keeps us safe is being steered by someone who's wholly unprepared for the job puts America at risk, and I am not willing to do that. With that in mind, Mr. Hegseth, I want you to try to explain to the American people, this committee, who have to vote for you, and to our troops who are deployed around the world, why you are qualified to lead the Department of Defense.
Senator Duckworth addresses Hegseth face-to-face in the Senate hearing, speaking in a firm, controlled voice. She challenges his qualifications, essentially telling him he has not earned the role he's being considered for. Senator Duckworth brings up his past statements and record, especially comments about women in the military, to argue that he lacks understanding of how the modern military works. As a combat veteran herself, Senator Duckworth contrasts her own experience and the role of women in service with his views, implying he is out of touch. She escalates her critique by describing his track record as full of failures or poor judgment, emphasizing that this makes him unsuitable. Throughout, Duckworth maintains eye contact and a serious posture, signaling authority and frustration rather than emotion or theatrics.
We already know that you've only led the largest, a 200-person organization. We already know that you so badly mangled a budget that after you left, they had to bring in a forensic accountant to figure out what went wrong. And that the largest budget you ever managed was about $18 billion. You know, that is about 51,560 times lower than the Department of Defense budget of $825 billion. $16 million is 51,568 times smaller than the defense budget. Please describe to me, Mr. Hegseth, you talk about DOD passing an audit. Please describe to me a time or an organization when that you led underwent an audit, because you say you're going to hire smarter people than you to run this audit. I'm not asking you to be an accountant. I want you to be able to tell me what kind of guidance will be given to those employees, what will happen whether or not you pass that audit. Have you led an audit of any organization, yes or no? I don't want a long answer, yes or no. Have you led an audit of any organization of which you were in charge?
Senator, in both of the organizations I ran, we were always completely fiscally responsible.
Yes or no, did you lead an audit?
And the way my leadership has been stated,
did you lead an audit? Yes or no?
Completely mischaracterized.
What are you afraid of? You can't answer this question. Yes or no, did you lead an audit? Do you not know this answer?
Senator, every part of my leadership of these organizations has been misrepresented.
I will take that as a no. What were the findings? So there were no findings because you've never led an audit. What guidance did you give the auditors? None, because you've never led an audit. Nobody expects you to be an accountant, Mr. Hegseth. What we expect is for you to understand the complexity of this Pentagon budget process that is absolutely necessary to outfit our warfighters. Look, the Secretary of Defense is required to make quick decisions every single day with high-level information that's being provided for them. A Secretary of Defense has to have breadth and depth of knowledge. Right now, I am concerned that you have neither. Mr. Hegseth, what is the highest level of international negotiations that you have engaged in, that you have led in? Because the Secretary of Defense does lead international security negotiations. There are three main ones that the Secretary of Defense leads and signs. Can you name at least one of them?
Could you repeat the question, Senator?
Sure. What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led? And can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other than serving in the military. So my job has been to
no. The answer is no. Can you name one of the three main ones that the Secretary of Defense signs?
You're talking about defense arrangements. I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't remember to mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified. You talk about repairing our defense industrial complex. You're not qualified to that. You could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that. You've done none of those. You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of nations in that, but I know we have allies in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, and trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr. Hegseth, none of those countries are in
allies
ASEAN.
Across.
None of those 3 countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations. Listen, Mr. Hegseth, we ask our troops to go into harm's way all the time. We ask them to go into harm's way. And this behind me is a copy of the Soldier's Creed, a copy that usually hangs over my desk here in the Senate, and you should be familiar with it. It's the same copy that hung over my desk at Walter Reed every single day that I woke up and fought my way back because I wanted to go back and serve next to my buddies who'd saved my life. This same copy, these words are repeated over and over and over again. And let me read out 2 things to you, 2 sentences. I will always place the mission first, and I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and proficient in my warrior task. Mr. Hegseth, our troops follow these words every single day, and they man up and they pack their rucksacks and they go to war. And they deserve a leader who can lead them, not a leader who wants to lower the standards for himself or raising the standards for other people. And by the way, our troops already meet the standards. We ask troops to man that ship, fight that fire, fly that helicopter until their very last breath. And they do that every single day. They cannot be led by someone who's not competent to do the job. How can we ask these warriors to train and perform the absolute highest standards when you are asking us to lower the standards to make you the Secretary of Defense simply because you are buddies with our president-elect? And by the way, he has filed for bankruptcy 6 times. I'm not quite sure he's the kind of CEO you want to refer to as a successful businessman. Let me make it clear. You can't seem to grasp that there is no U.S. military as we know it without the incredible women that we serve. Women who've earned their place in their units. You have not earned your place as Secretary of Defense. You say you care about keeping our armed forces strong and that you like that our armed forces are meritocracy, then let's not lower the standards for you. You, sir, are a no-go at this station.
The hearing room has that familiar tension, polite on the surface, but charged underneath. Cameras are rolling, aides are watching closely, and every word is being measured. Tammy Duckworth leans forward slightly. Her voice isn't raised, but it carries weight. She's not there to chat. She's there to test. Across from her sits Pete Hegseth, composed but clearly aware that this is not a friendly exchange. Confirmation hearings often include tough questions, but this feels sharper, more personal. Duckworth begins methodically. She doesn't start with insults. She starts with record. She references his past statements, especially ones about women in the military, and brings them into the present moment. Each point lands like a stepping stone, building towards something larger. Then the shift comes. She stops circling and goes straight at the center. His qualifications. Her tone tightens. She essentially tells him that he hasn't demonstrated the experience, judgment, or respect for service members required for the role. Coming from her, it carries extra force. She's a combat veteran, someone who has lived the consequences of military decisions, not just talked about them. Hegseth tries to respond, but the structure of the hearing limits him. This is her time. She presses on, not letting the moment diffuse. The exchange becomes less about a single answer and more about a broader indictment. The political context is not just about them. It is about the machinery of democracy in motion. In the United States, power, at least in theory, is never handed over casually. When a president selects someone for a position of national importance, especially one tied to defense or security, that choice must pass through scrutiny. The Senate becomes the testing ground, not just for competence, but for judgment, for worldview, for alignment with the nation's evolving values. And so, what unfolds here is more than questioning. It is evaluation under a spotlight. Duckworth speaks with control, but also with intent. Her questions are not scattered. They are structured. She is building something, not just a critique, but a narrative. She draws attention to past statements, particularly those concerning women in the military. And in doing so, she taps into a broader transformation, because the military itself has changed. It is no longer an institution defined by a narrow image of who serves. Women now operate in combat roles. Leadership expectations have shifted. Inclusion is no longer a side conversation. It is central. So when she raises these points, she is asking something deeper than, "What did you say?" She is asking, "Do you understand the institution as it exists today?" This is where the political current sharpens. There is, quietly but unmistakably, the presence of partisanship. In Washington, disagreements are rarely just about individuals. They are about direction. Supporting a nominee often signals support for the administration's broader agenda. Opposing them signals resistance to it. Every question, every answer, becomes part of a larger ideological contest. But layered on top of that is something more subtle and more human. In a setting like this, credibility is everything, and it does not come from one place alone. Duckworth's authority is rooted in lived experience. Her service, her sacrifices, her proximity to the realities of war. When she speaks, she is not just citing information. She is speaking for within the system being discussed. Hegseth, by contrast, represents a different kind of credibility, one shaped by communication, by advocacy, by influence in the public sphere. And so, what unfolds is not just questioning, but quiet comparison between two types of authority: institutional experience versus public persuasion. And all the while, there is an audience, not just the senators in the room, but millions beyond it, watching, interpreting, deciding what this moment means. Because confirmation hearings are not only about decisions, they are about perception. A few minutes of exchange can shape how a nominee is seen, remembered, and judged. And from this, the lessons begin to emerge. First, that preparation is power. Duckworth's approach is not improvised. It is deliberate. Each point connects to the next, forming a chain that is difficult to break. In high-stakes environments, clarity and structure often matter more than volume. Second, that authority amplifies impact. The same words, spoken by someone without her background, might not carry the same weight, but credibility, earned over time, gives criticism a sharper edge. It reminds us that who speaks can matter as much as what is said. Third, that perception can rival reality. In moments like this, it is not only about whether someone is qualified, it is about whether they're seen as qualified. Public judgment does not always wait for full context. It forms quickly, often from moments just like this one. Fourth, that leadership demands alignment with the present, not the past. Institutions evolve, expectations shift, and those who seek to lead must demonstrate not only competence, but understanding of that evolution. The question is not just what have you done, but are you ready for what this role now requires? And finally, that politics at its core is a contest of narratives, not fiction, but framing, competing interpretations of reality. In this exchange, Duckworth is not merely asking questions. She is telling a story about suitability, about values, about the kind of leadership she believes a country needs.
Whether one agrees or disagrees is almost secondary. What matters is recognizing what is happening beneath the surface. Because moments like this, quiet, controlled, and intensely focused, are where decisions begin to take shape, where reputations are tested, where the direction of institutions and sometimes entire nations is subtly steered. And all of it unfolds not through force, but through words.